My name's Cameron Dougherty, and this is a detailed review of the NuPhy Air96 keyboard. I've had this keyboard for over a year at this point. I actually posted a first impressions video which compared it to the Air95 keyboard way back in April of 2023. At that time I was trying lots of keyboards and posting lots of reviews, then those largely stopped. There were some personal reasons why, but a not so personal reason is that I just straight up didn't want to stop using this keyboard. And just like that, poof, it's been a year of using this as my daily driver. So there you have it, a 30-second review. The answer is that I love it and it's awesome. But this is not a 30-second review. This is a detailed review, a name that I'm introducing here but will be using going forward to let you know when I'm going to deep dive into all those lovely little details that you may want to know. So buckle up for the whole ride or just use the sections down at the bottom to match the one that fits your need. Either way, let's jump in. But first, a quick note from our sponsor, which is this channel, Cameron Dougherty Tech. That's right, I'm going to be turning up the heat on this channel in the coming months, which means you can expect a lot more videos across a myriad of tech topics. So please consider subscribing, liking the video, and commenting down below what you'd like me to cover in a future video. Plus, if you want to buy a product in this video or in any other video, then check out the video descriptions to find an affiliate link. These help provide a small commission to the channel without any additional cost to you so that I can keep purchasing these to review them and let you know how they are. So with that, back to the video. First, I want to point out that this review is of the Air96 V1. Now, NuPhy has been actually cranking through keyboard releases recently, and this one quickly became outdated after its release in early 2023. As of the time of filming, it's still available, but less than a year after this was released, a V2 came out. The V2 doesn't feature any truly game-changing updates, but rather a series of small upgrades that might or might not be important to you. I'll run through them here so that you can decide whether those additions are worth the extra $10 it will cost you. So in appearance, the V2 is very similar, but it's available in a new basalt black color. Additionally, the bottom of the case is more transparent than this one, and the internal components are color matched since you can kind of see through to see them. So these upgrades are really just slight changes, and the appearance is already stellar in the V1. So if you're not looking for the new black, the other updates are mostly irrelevant, especially since by their nature, they're going to be facing down on your desk and you won't really see them. From a sound and feel perspective, the V2 adds one additional sound dampening pad. Spoiler alert, this one already sounds pretty amazing. The spacebar also adds some silicone to soften the sound and make it more consistent, and there was a slight change to the switch offerings. They added a new one called Moss in V2, and they changed what was Daisy into Cowberry with some slight tweaks. Once again, these are minor unless you specifically want the new switches. Outside of a side-by-side comparison, you're probably not going to notice the difference in sound, and you'll probably be happy either way. So finally comes performance and features. V2 adds a USB dongle with 1000 Hertz polling as opposed to 500 Hertz on this model, which means it's even better for gaming, and it also adds remapping capabilities through QMK and VIA. If you're a gamer or a modder, these changes might be essential to you, but if you typically use things as they come out of the box or are just using it for casual games or productivity tasks, V1 is still great. So outside of those items, they're pretty much identical. The Air96, V1, and V2 are basically the same except for those items. So let's go into a long-term review of this V1 so that you can find out my overall thoughts. Starting with physical characteristics, I love the NuPhy design aesthetic. The simple primary colors with fun accents are a welcome change from the stale, just plain whites and blacks of many of the large manufacturers. What sets them apart even more is that despite the bold pops of color, it still has an air of sophistication that I'd feel comfortable bringing to the office. It's not going to feel super out of place there. I'm personally partial to the ionic white, they call it, which is this one here, but the lunar gray and basalt black options will appeal to others. They're all clean and simple, yet still fun and whimsical with the different colored keys. The materials are light yet sturdy and overall feel premium without being excessive. The keycaps are a nice double-shot PBT, which is a higher-end plastic that will hold up against the smoothing and shine that you can get from cheaper keycaps. And after a full year of use, they've smoothed slightly, but I really don't see any shine. So I would say they've held up extremely well to wear and tear over the course of a full year of use. All models feature RGB backlighting as well as 2 RGB light bars on the side. The backlighting looks great, though the standard keycaps don't have shine through. So if that's something that you're looking for, NuPhy does offer a $19 set of polycarbonate keycaps that include shine through, but please note that that polycarbonate material won't hold up quite as well as the PBT, so it's a bit of a trade-off there. There are several different RGB patterns and colors available, so you're bound to find something that you'll like. You can cycle through them using combinations of the function and arrows plus a couple other keys. And there's a guide in the box as well as on their website showing you exactly what they are. Personally, I like keyboards when they have different indicators on the keys indicating how you adjust backlighting. It helps you in a pinch, and also if you ever accidentally change it and you don't mean to, you don't have to pull out the manual to figure it out. So the fact that they're not here means that you have to sometimes go back if you need to look it up, but there's no additional markings, so it does wind up being nice and clean, which I'm sure some people would prefer. Now, the side light bars are a particularly unique item for NuPhy. They not only look interesting, they're actually functional as well, which still boggles my mind. They show certain things like when you enable caps lock, and they also indicate battery status, lighting up red when you need a charge. At this point, after using a NuPhy keyboard for a while, I don't pay a ton of attention to them. I don't really notice them, but I will say that when it's running low on battery and it lights up red, it grabs my attention and reminds me to plug it in, which is great. From an ergonomics perspective, the Air 96 has adjustable feet on the bottom with 2 levels of height adjustment. I use the highest one on a daily basis, but I love the fact that there is adjustability rather than the old removable feet that they used on some of their previous models. These feet are also part of NuPhy's Air feet. These are Air feet V3, which are designed to sit on top of a MacBook and kind of replace the MacBook keyboard. That works great on the 75% model. I think it's really innovative, but these feet don't line up on the 96 to a MacBook, and so I'm not really sure that they add much extra usefulness. Moving on to connectivity, this keyboard supports just about any operating system you could want: Mac, Windows, Android, as well as iOS. And it provides multi-device connectivity, which means that you can easily switch between, for example, a work device and a personal device with ease. Simply using the function button and 1, 2, 3, and 4 keys allows you to switch. So 1 through 3 are all Bluetooth 5.0 connections, and number 4 connects you to the included USB dongle. This particular model comes with a 500 Hertz connection, and as I mentioned earlier, the V2 has a 1000 Hertz connection. Finally, using a physical switch on the back of the device, you can go from wireless into wired mode, which enables direct wired connection to your device. And that can be critical if you're somebody that likes to build computers or you otherwise need to get into your BIOS when your keyboard's not already set up with that computer. Wired connections are via a USB-C port in the back, and the device ships with a pretty nice braided USB-A to USB-C cable. This keyboard does move into a sleep mode after just 6 minutes of inactivity. However, compared to many other keyboards that I've tested, this wakes up way quicker. So no more than really a single key press and you're back up and running. If you prefer, they do have a key command that allows you to turn off sleep mode in order to ensure that you don't miss any key presses. But if you're gonna do that, just make sure you remember to turn off your keyboard, because if you disable it and you keep it running, you're gonna kill your battery. Now, speaking of battery, the Air 96 includes a rechargeable one, and it's one heck of a battery. Coming in at 4,000 milliamp hours, this battery is elite. Now, I didn't perform any scientific testing. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense because my usage and your usage are gonna vary, but just comparing this anecdotally to other ones that I've tested, I charge this way less than any other keyboard I've ever tested. Outside of ones that have no backlighting and that have replaceable batteries that can last for multiple years, this one, when you compare it to other rechargeable keyboards, is just on another level. I easily made it many weeks, if not even into months, without needing to charge. And I typically do use backlighting. So I used RGB with the one where when you press a key, it lights up the individual key rather than one that has it all always on. So you might see a little bit less, but no matter what you do, comparing this thing apples to apples to another similar keyboard, I can almost guarantee that this one is going to outlast it. Finally, let's talk in detail about what it's like to use this thing. So first, since those of you who live for keyboard audio tests have been waiting so patiently, thank you, here is a typing test with the Wisteria switches that I got, and I'm also going to do a test with the extra switches that it provides, just showing you a side-by-side of each of them. So let's jump to those. Typing on the Air 96 is great. When I reviewed the Air 75, I noted a lot of hollowness in both the sound and also the feel of typing on the keyboard. Those are both almost entirely gone with the 96, and I suspect even further removed in the V2 versions of both keyboards, thanks to their added layers of sound dampening. The spacebar is the only key really on this keyboard that leaves a little room for improvement in my opinion, but once again, that gets addressed in the V2. Typing volume is at a sweet spot for me. It's right where my ear wants to hear it. It's a pleasant sound at the right volume, which just makes it a joy to use. Typing feel is excellent as well. The keys are ever so slightly concave, which helps to align your fingers when typing. It's subtle, so you probably won't even really notice it or think about it on a day-to-day basis. But then when you switch to some flatter keyboards, like for me when I go to type on my MacBook, I really wind up missing the small little curves and the help that they provide. The keycaps feel nice as well. As I mentioned, they have smoothed ever so slightly over time, which is noticeable only when comparing some of the really commonly used keys to some of the less commonly used keys. And this honestly isn't something that I noticed at all until I was really inspecting this keyboard in order to do this review. So I doubt most people are going to notice it, and if you don't look for it, you probably won't really know that it's there. Additionally, since the PBT material resists shine, and that has held up, I believe that's the thing that people are going to be far more likely to notice, and so overall I think you're going to be just fine with the longevity of this. Functionally, the layout of the keyboard might be a bit divisive. The keyboard exists in this odd in-between where it tries to be small and compact while still delivering the full functionality of a full-size keyboard. If you desire having that 10 key and need to remain as compact as possible to fit within your setup, then this is perfect. But if space is not a concern, then it's hard to not feel like this is some bit of a compromise. Now let me explain. There's three main trade-offs for this compact design. And first, by pushing everything together, NuPhy has provided a smaller 0 key on the number pad. And what this taught me is that typically my thumb rests on the left side of the 0 key when I use a 10 key. And the adjustment here was actually a lot harder than I expected. Admittedly, part of it might be a defect in my own design. I have pretty large hitchhiker thumbs, which means that it's a little bit harder for me to position my thumb at that position than other people. However, I believe that this is most evident when you're trying to type a 0-1 pattern. And so you could try this if you've got a 10 key at home. If it has a bigger 0, move it over to the right side of it and try to kind of climb over to that 1, typing 0-1. That's what it feels like to me, and it winds up being difficult and uncomfortable. Now, the second trade-off is kind of right next door, and it's these arrow keys. They also suffer from being squished into the compact design, and for this, without having any separation around the arrow keys, I find it difficult if I'm touch typing to suddenly move over to the arrow keys without having some sort of identifier to tell me where I need to be. It's common to have a little raised up part on one of those keys to help you identify it, but that's not present here. That honestly might have been enough to be able to do it, but instead I often wind up on different keys when I'm trying to get to the arrows. The last trade-off is the home and page up and page down keys. They live at the very top corner, and they're in a bit of no man's land. I honestly just tend to forget that they're up there. In the future, my preference would very much be to have those home and page up, page down keys down the middle, aligned with the right arrow key, shifting everything over just one key, and then using a full-size 0. This design can still be relatively compact relative to full-size boards, but without as many sacrifices on the usage front. Now, outside of the right side of this board and all those issues that I just talked about, there are no other real unusual choices. The function row has logical choices for keys, very similar to NuPhy's other keyboards and a lot of other comparable models. And the function button resides on the right-hand side, which is not my favorite, but I've grown to get used to it. Finally, I'm very happy to report that I do not have any issues with the right shift key. This is what I had an issue with on the Air 75. If you've seen that prior video, you'll know that I exclusively use the right shift key when typing. It's just the way that I learn, it's the way that I do it. And I learned that a lot of other people similarly use just one side or the other. Now with the Air 75, I found that because this right shift key was not stabilized, it caused a ton of misclicks. I was constantly missing when I was trying to capitalize different letters. It became such a problem that I had to stop using that keyboard altogether, and it now lives on my shelf as decoration over here. The Air 96 also lacks that stabilizer, so if you saw my previous unboxing first impressions type video, then you might know that I was concerned. But it has not been a problem a single time. Like, not one time do I recall using this in a year that I missed a click. And I think it's gotta be due to the pre-lubricated switches. It's the only really real difference here that I think must be what caused it. And so if you have one of the older models and you're having that issue that I had, I would say try lubricating it or potentially just adding in some new switches. That might solve the problem, but what I can say is from this keyboard perspective, I have had 0 issues with the right shift key. Thank you. So after all that, does the NuPhy Air 96 warrant the $130 price tag? Absolutely. It's one of the best all-around keyboards I've ever used, and the company appears to be showing no signs of stopping their streak of innovation. In particular, I think the differentiators here are the appearance, number 1, the typing experience, number 2, and the really, really impressive battery, number 3. And the only real potential deal breaker comes from the compact design, creating some minor inconveniences on the right side of the board. Overall, this keyboard is incredible.